Good evening and welcome to Books in Action. I am Melissa Kopecki. I just have the best of all jobs all around the clock because I'm the director of the South Orange Public Library, but then I get to do great stuff like sit and talk to authors. And tonight our guest is Ellen Dreyer. Am I saying your last name correctly?
Absolutely.
Okay. And she has written a lot of different things, but this is her new book called The Glowstone, which is a book written for the young adult market, which most people think of as teenagers or teens as opposed to young adults. As a matter of fact, like the young adult thing is sort of a hangover from a previous time, and a time when there weren't a lot of books written for that market, so it was more a question of labeling things that already existed, don't you think?
I think so.
And now there is actually truly a teen market, a teen marketing plan. Most publishing houses are looking for things that fit in that. Now,
absolutely.
So tell me if that's how you went for the teen. Why did you go for that level of writing, that audience?
I think I've always really related well to middle grade and teen high school students. And maybe it's because I have so many memories of that time from growing up. Good memories, some that are not so good, but definitely very strong memories. And for me, it's a time when there's so much change and growth going on and so much of a search for oneself and learning how one fits or doesn't fit into the social milieu, finding out what makes you a distinct person, what makes you your own person. And I think that's probably at the root of what compels me to write for this audience. Yeah.
It's kind of nice, too, because you've got an audience who's kind of open to anything. You know, and that's one of the things I love about that age group is they're really willing to let you throw anything at them and then just to judge you on, you know, how well you do it. So, but let's backtrack for a minute. You live in Maplewood.
5 years. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So you've been here for a while. And what got you into writing in the first place? Is this something as a kid? I mean, when you were a teenager yourself, did you always think that that's what you wanted to do?
Absolutely. When I was even younger, when I started when I was around 7, and I would make my own books. Like so many writers, I started very young. Would mimeograph them. At the time, it was mimeographing, not Xeroxing. And really, you know, started quite young, but in middle school and high school, writing took on a different kind of, a deeper kind of meaning for me. It was more about really finding out what was inside me. And as I was changing, becoming a teenager, wondering what I was going to, what my future held, you know, it was a way of exploring ideas, exploring my thoughts, my dreams. I used to write down a lot of dreams, wrote a lot of poetry, mostly poetry when I was in high school. And it carried over into fiction writing for me because the way, particularly with this book, the way it began was with just almost writing stream of consciousness and not thinking about a story, but writing down pages and pages of whatever came into my head. And then I got an idea, which I had a kind of a dream image of a girl in a cave and started writing on, you know, about that. And gradually the story came out of kind of almost a free writing, not knowing where it was going to go, what the story was.
Now, is this something that you make yourself do? I mean, do you make yourself write? Do you do, and then stuff comes out of that exercise of making yourself write, or is it that you get particular inspirations and you start on a writing about one inspiration? It
It really differs from one story to another. Sometimes I get an idea and I write an outline, but that's a bit unusual for me. I'm not a super organized person in terms of writing down thoughts and ideas and then following them. I tend to really, I find more inspiration in almost a single image or a series of images. I can almost see kind of a bit of a movie playing in my head. And you know, and then a story grows out of that. But it's different for each project. It really is. For a novel, writing novels for me, and I think probably for a lot of writers, takes a lot of staying power. You know, the ability to write and revise, especially to revise for long periods of time, to put it aside, to come back and look at it again. And it takes a kind of stamina that other writing, such as writing a chapter book or writing a picture book, doesn't really take, because they're shorter and less involved usually.
Let me just, a chapter book for people who don't talk children's literature is actually a beginner reader kind of chapter book. So it's called that because of kids who are moving up from, you know, your Dr. Seuss beginner reader kind of thing, you know, the Green Eggs and Ham or millions of other wonderful books. Then they go into books that actually have chapters. So that's a young writer thing where, you could hold the whole story in your head. It's not very complicated. And this story is actually very, very complicated because it ends up going in directions that one doesn't expect. So one of the things in here is, well, you already said that it started with a vision of a girl in a cave, and there is a whole caving thing, which actually is a very visual thing. You were talking about seeing the movie in your head. I think, you know, you're picturing people down in the caves and the way you've described it. You feel the atmosphere and, you know, what's actually happening. And I don't think you could read that without having the visuals in your head going with it. But I've really been dying to ask you, have you done that? Did you go caving? Did that come before or after, you know, writing this?
Well, it came around the time I was starting to do some of this free writing that led to the book. But it was what I was writing about. There was kind of a story in it, but it was very different from what the novel ended up being, from the actual plot. But I decided that some of the writing did have to do with going down in a cave, and I thought I'd better really go down in a cave because I wasn't sure what I was writing about. You know, it's one thing to kind of have a picture in your mind about what a cave is like, and you know, and a lot of the things we imagine are really down there, the stalactites and stalagmites, the bats, the you know, dripping water sound, you know.
The orcs and all those visuals now at the Lord of the Rings films or whatever, what the inside of a cave looks like,
Yeah, totally, you know, the echoes. And it was really, it's not something that I would do as a hobby, certainly, but it was an amazing experience going down in caves, and really incredibly visceral, scary at times, because, you know, I have a bit of claustrophobia, not a lot, but enough to make those really narrow passages seem, you know, kind of daunting to go into.
So did you just find a group of cavers or something and said, take me, I want to see what this is like?
I did. I was living in Brooklyn at the time.
Just Cave Central there.
I know, you might as well go in the subways. There is actually somebody who takes people on the tour of some of the subway tunnels under Atlantic Avenue, which are supposed to be a little like
I've heard about that. Yes,
caves.
Not unlike caves, although in some ways maybe scarier.
Maybe scarier, yes, and noisier. But I joined a group called the Metropolitan Grotto, which is I believe, still the New York City caving club. And they go to all over the place. Many experienced cavers belong to this organization. There are a lot of caves in upstate New York and in Pennsylvania, so there are many places you can go that are really pretty close to the city, within a few hours' drive. And I went to caves in upstate New York, up in Schoharie County to be exact. Yeah.
So how close is the cave that's in the book, which includes underground running water,
Right,
and
right.
some really tight places and branching off things and stuff? Is that very close to a place or places that you actually went?
It is. I actually modeled the cave in the book a bit after Surprise Cave, which is a cave in upstate New York, in Schoharie County. And I had a map. I believe at some point I looked at a map of the cave, and I kind of drew out a map that was roughly patterned on that particular cave, but then, I added my own stuff to it, that as the story grew and as her journey, as I got deeper into writing about Phoebe's journey in the cave. So I had my own map, but I kind of based it a bit on the actual cave.
Well, the cave, I mean, it's a perfect metaphor for getting to that spot in your life where you sort of have to rip away all pretenses and get to the heart of things, which is sort of the process she's going through as she's in the cave. Although in here it's actually a very terrifying thing because there's the physical scariness part as well as the mental. But one of the things that struck me, and also as sort of like that ultimate, more is happening here besides just the physical, is the complete blackness in the cave. You turn out your light and there's nothing there. Did you have that experience personally?
Absolutely. And that was something, being led into a cave by the members of the grotto, there were certain experiences that they wanted first-time cavers to have, and that was one of them, where we turned off our lamps, our carbide, because we were using carbide lamps, and everything went dark. And, there was a group of about 10 people there, but you would see nothing, you would hear nothing, everybody was just quiet. Maybe, you'd hear a bit of breathing, but most people were holding their breath at that point. And it was a pretty amazing feeling. It was a feeling of fear, of a kind of being in a void, maybe a bit like what being in outer space is like, I don't know, but a feeling of kind of a disintegration in a way. And in a way that's something I imagined as much as probably felt, but there was a bit of that feeling that your body could just disintegrate into this total darkness. And it was powerful.
That's very cool, because I think a lot of us have been in a place dark enough where you get that feeling that dark you could touch it, the dark.
Yeah.
But that underground aspect really adds that feeling that you're going beneath, you're going to something elemental, which is very cool the way it's used in here.
Oh, thank you.
It actually kind of makes me want to go caving, but it kind of makes me scared at the idea of it.
There are warm, dry caves. You could choose from warm, dry cave in the Southwest.
There's a whole cold thing going on. Actually, we're going to have to take a break in a second and go dark ourselves for a minute, but and I want to ask you lots more questions about writing and the process and how you guide other people through it too as well. So we'll have a lot more coming, but I just couldn't resist jumping right into the cave thing because that's a very unique thing in this story, and I think you use it incredibly well.
Oh, thank you.
So, there's actually the geology thing that's going on, which is sort of associated with the cave and sort of not, but we can get back into that, and I know you teach creative writing as well, so I do want to ask you a little bit about that. So we'll be back in a minute, and right now we're just going to take a short break. This is really fun talking to you.
Thank you. It's great.
Hello! You sit. Spot sit. Good boy.
All those extra treats. That's good.
And it's like
Okay, treat over.
Nice.
just went to the best home, man.
That was so awesome.
Had to pull away.
You'd never know that we just ran out, went into a cave, and got back here again. It was amazing. Well, that's a good thing about writing and about books. You can do that all in your head in just a
Right.
minute break. But I want to get to the writing thing because I think for anybody, I think there were lots of people who were, grew up saying, oh, I'm going to be a writer when I grow up, and who may have written, but it's one of those fields where, it's not necessarily easy to make a living at doing it. So, you may be a writer on the side. Not only that, you might be a very good writer, but not find the proper market for your stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So can you tell us a little bit about how that happened for you and what other
Sure.
kinds of writing you've done besides this book?
Sure. I guess my love of children's books really started when I got a job reading The Slush Pile at a children's book publisher.
Oh, yeah, that's a heavenly job, isn't that?
It
lucky?
really was great. It was one of my first jobs in publishing because I did work in publishing for a number of years while I was beginning to write professionally, and continuously I was always working on my own. When I say my own, I mean the work that I really wanted to do, but that wasn't necessarily lucrative. So for years I started out reading The Slush Pile. I was also a children's book editor for quite a long time.
Oh, great.
And I was in and out of being on staff or being a freelancer. I ended up, when my son was born, going completely freelance and as a writer for the most part, but working in a different market, not working in a trade book or a bookstore book market. I have written and still write a lot of books that are used in classroom reading programs. They're often called leveled readers or books for at-risk readers. I do a lot of work both as a writer and editor of books for young people who are reading below their grade level, often quite a bit below.
So do you enter that with sort of a structure of contained vocabulary and
Yes, it's very
a
different.
certain length?
Yes.
So you're taking a structure and then you're writing to fill the structure that you have of
Yes.
the kind of book that's needed for that particular circumstance.
There is a structure, but there also is a lot of room for creativity. And I found that because I've also had the opportunity to manage some of these projects as an editor, writers really bring their own individuality, and I have as a writer, to the books. They're nonfiction, fiction books. You're just more limited in, as far as the vocabulary that you can use, and you have to score them at the end to make sure they fit strictly in that vocabulary. But there's a big need for these books, and as a writer, if you want to be writing literary fiction, if you want to be writing poetry, you might find that's a way to make a living and kind of keep yourself going while you're working in the early mornings or at night on your passion. And that's kind of the path that my career's taken.
Well, personally, I think what a great market to be writing for. I mean, at-risk readers, like,
Yeah.
what better thing could you be doing with writing, and what could more inspire you to really to need to be creative? Like, sort
Yes.
of this is a last chance to catch these people and turn them into lifetime, maybe not readers, not people who devour books, but people who are able to use reading in ways that people need to use it. So.
Absolutely. And I feel very committed to that. I think it's, I think that it's not just kids, the kids and adults who, they're the people who can really use really good, good books, good fiction, good nonfiction, compelling, writing that really grabs you by the collar. And so I do feel committed to that, and I strive for that in my fiction. It's just that I don't have all those parameters I have to think about. I don't
Right.
have to worry about word lists or scoring or any of that, which
Right.
thank goodness. It'd be difficult to have to worry about that.
Right, and it's the same, even with the same reader. I think, that simplifying things to make the process of reading easier is important. To get people to also be able to appreciate the thing that might be too hard to read or not, but you're willing to do it because something about it has sucked you in. So there's certainly a place for both of those things, especially with like emergent readers at whatever age they
Right.
happen to be.
Right,
And I
right.
think there's a growing feeling that we have overlooked those people who are beyond what the early beginner reader stuff and the chapter book stuff are,
Yes.
but who still really need the reward of being able to read at that level, of being able
Yes.
to pick up a story and not get lost because they're struggling with the words on the page,
Yes.
but at a slightly higher level. So it's kind of
Yes.
encouraging to know that people are, attacking this in sort of a scientific fashion, so that
Yes.
we're serving the kids that need it,
Absolutely.
or adults,
Absolutely.
as the case may be.
Yeah. Yeah.
You have also taught creative writing, right? To
Yes.
kids like middle school, high school?
Middle
kind of
school,
age?
high school. It's something I just adore doing. I really love to go into a classroom, classrooms. Usually going into a school involves going into several classrooms during the
Right.
course of a day, maybe up to 5 or 6. And talking to kids about their writing, about what they're working on, talking to them about my writing and my process. I find it's one of the most exciting things I've ever done, and just want to keep on doing. So, yeah.
Do you feel like, looking back on your life in high school as a writer, do you feel like there are more kids who are more upfront with their writing now? Is there a difference than how there used to be? I mean, like the open stage poetry thing is pretty new in in this generation, and
Right.
I have certainly run into some kids, and we interviewed some who were very open and public about their writing, which was just a wonderful thing to see.
It is. It really is.
But I didn't know how that worked with non-poetry stuff, like if you see, because
Kids who are into slams, poetry slams, and that. I do see what I see is kids who are really serious about their work in a way that I don't remember. I mean, I don't remember being quite on that level. I mean, I think they take themselves seriously almost as a professional does, which I think is really great, because it shows me that a lot of students have a confidence in their voices, and that is very encouraging to see. There was one wonderful experience I had in a school in Brooklyn where the students were working on novels. Now, when I was in high school, I don't remember, I would have never attempted that.
thought of that, right.
I don't remember anybody working on novels. I thought about it, I couldn't remember anybody working on a piece that long. But these students were very focused, and the projects were taking them the whole year, and they had a teacher who, was committed to working with them on this. Wow. And when they stood up to read sections of their work, they conveyed just such a sense of, commitment to what they were doing, belief in themselves, belief in their words, that was very moving, actually.
Yeah,
And
amazing.
I'm not saying that I see that everywhere, because I don't, but I did see it there, and I have seen it elsewhere, and it's very inspiring to see, and to be a part of that as a teacher, as a person coming into the class from the outside who was professional. It's amazing. It really put a huge smile on my face to
Right. And
witness that. Yeah.
And just the commitment that means that kids have made to communicate.
Yep.
You know, whether they grow up to be writers or not. I mean, they
Yeah.
have tools of any trade in being able to use language.
Absolutely, yeah.
To communicate
Yep.
and understand what goes into that. That's very cool.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
yeah.
have you used that as a writer, a working in a group sort of thing? The reading aloud was what made me think of that when you said the kids, you know, when they read aloud, I assume then they have sessions where they comment on it. I have never been part of any kind of group like that, but I know a lot of writers who have worked
Yes.
in a group.
Yes.
So you do.
I
have done
do.
that.
I am in a group, a local group of writers, which is a wonderful group, and we get together, we, you know, share each other's work, give each other feedback, constructive feedback, help each other make the work better. We talk about the publishing market. You know, we drink coffee and a glass of wine and you know, share our own personal news, and it's just a great way to have an outlet for, I think, our work and for this endeavor, which is often a lonely one. I mean, being a writer is very solitary for most of the time. So if you have that little 5% or 10% of your time as a writer when you're getting out and connecting with other writers, and also to have that sense of trust where you can show other writers or even one other writer your work and know that it will be received in a open-hearted kind of a way, and not, you know, I mean, very often when you're a writer sending your work out to publishing companies, you get more rejections.
Right.
Often a form letter, if you're lucky, maybe, you know, there will be a little note at the bottom of the form letter, you know, saying thanks for trying, or, you know.
Right.
But there's not a lot of response from that world, so you need your
But
community.
That's a lovely thing, and it's right about us and South Orange and Maplewood and what a tight kind of community is. I absolutely, totally can't believe that we're almost out of time here because
Oh.
I know.
I can't believe it either.
Because
It's
we
not
didn't
fair.
have a chance to go in the geology thing or
Oh.
Phoebe, and I didn't want to give away a lot of the book because I wanted to leave it to be a surprise for people because there's a lot that happens in it. But I did want to talk about it a little bit more and how the character develops, and we just ran out of time, so oh well. It was great talking to you.
Great talking to you,
and,
too.
it's nice to know that writers support each other and that they write for all different audiences. So it's been very nice.
It's a
But I
pleasure.
really
Thank
wanted
you.
to ask you more about Phoebe.
To be
Feel
continued.
sad, and you lost the dearest pal that you ever had. There'll come a time when you regret it. There'll come a time, now don't forget it. Someday when you grow lonely, your heart will ache like mine, and you want me only after you're gone away.